Hasn't given me the okay, we're ready. Okay. Okay, I will call the Nisswa City Council Workshop for Tuesday, October 18th, 2022 to order. The reason for the workshop is 2023 budget discussion, and I will turn it over to Jenny.
Thank you, Mayor Ryan. Good evening, members of the council. We are here tonight to talk about our budget and our 2023 budget and levy. I have a couple of introductory slides, but mostly for tonight, I have really information that we've been talking about the last couple of months. But I think it's just the opportunity for the council as a whole tonight together to have more conversation about the budget and where we'd like to go. And hopefully we can make progress on final levy. So tonight, hopefully we can set the final levy or very close to, if there are things we want to iron out closer to the end of the year. Understandably, we'll need a little more time to do that. But at the end of the evening, I'm looking for hopefully a good range of where we'd like to land ideally. There's a memo in your packet outlined, I think 6 or 7 different categories. In talking with Mayor Ryan in preparation for tonight's meeting, we felt that these topics in general categories would be the most relevant and helpful for the council. So with that, I've included some budget knowns information, some unknowns. There's requests for staffing and equipment, as we've talked about with the new items list. We can pull that up again if we'd like. We're in our time of year where we will work to pre-purchase anything we can to help alleviate some of the burden on next year's budget. So if there are smaller equipment needs or things like that we can purchase now with available 2022 dollars, we will do that. We can talk about ARPA funding if it makes sense to do so in relation to the budget, depending on the things you'd like to see incorporated into the budget, or something one-time purchases or things that we want to potentially use ARPA funding for, we can do that. I also included our debt schedule for the council. It was requested to see that, so I just provided that for your reference, but I'm happy to answer questions about that if you would like to talk about that in more detail. And in the packet, there is more information specifically about the staffing requests. So I requested information from Police and Public Works and trying to give you a little more context and more detail on what those staffing requests would help facilitate for their goals for next year. So hopefully that is helpful information to give you a more complete picture on that. And then finally, I did include the same 3 tax impact sheets from our September workshop, reflecting the 19%, the 13%, and the 9% levy increase scenarios to give you a range of what that might look like as far as a tax impact goes. I don't think really the preliminary levy, as a reminder, was set at 19.11%. So I think the goal was to see where you'd like to go with that in December. Following that, the information is really the same as the September slides. So with that, I'm going to leave this slide up with the new items list, but I'm going to turn it over to Mayor Ryan to see where he'd like to start the conversation. And I am here to help assist with your discussion tonight.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think what I'd like to do is it's time for us to start whittling things down. It's time to figure out what we can, where we're all sitting on what we feel is feasible for this year. We already know what's going to happen. That has to happen. The 9% number that Jenny had represented, or that we looked at the last time, those are things that are already in play. There's really not much we can do about it as far as inflationary costs that have gone up, and then already planned expenses from pay increases, et cetera, to step increase, all that. So we know that. But on the other things that we looked at, we left it at basically everything is in there. So we could have this discussion tonight, and then probably again in November, so we make our decision. So what I'm looking at is I think what we need to do is figure out what's feasible that we can get into, or we can, pass on to the taxpayer. We have to remember we're passing this directly on to all the taxpayers. Everyone is doing the same thing we're doing. Their budgets are hurting, their income hurting, so we gotta keep all that in mind as we go ahead and add to their misery, which we're going to do. We have no choice. We're gonna have to bump it. So, with that, you know, I kind of know where I'm at, but I'd just like to know where everybody else is at. And then we can go from there with further discussion. So I don't know if we want to start on one end or the other. Don, do you want to give us your 2 cents and we'll just work our way down?
So, this being the first one, recently, I went and looked through all the requests, and we can get, oh, thank you. We could get real picky and go through them one by one, but when you're talking about $50 or $500, when you add all those up, we're not gonna make what we're looking at. So I looked at it a different way. I took all the items that were very expensive. I've got a $300 one in here, an $80 one, two $80 ones, a $17,000 one, and $150,000 one. I figure if we can take a look at these, I'm not suggesting we turn them all down, not in the least. I'm suggesting we take maybe one or two of them to knock down what we're doing to it.
Okay.
Do it in mass rather than trying to do it by file cabinet or whatever.
Okay.
So with that approach, perhaps we go with the ones that Don listed. Would you like to go with, start with them, or are there any that you guys would like to add, we can highlight?
We can start at that with me.
Well, really what I'm thinking of is, there's capital expenditures, you know, these one-time purchases. Most of those are pretty well required, I would think, for what we're looking at. But as far as hiring people, you know, we need to be really careful on looking at that full-time. You know, we can do part-time or look at other ways of handling costs, you know, like how can you reduce the amount of time that's required to do something? And that's really what I'm interested in trying to find out what in this type of budget here, what can be done that way. So. Mhm.
Well, I kind of also looked at some of the things that are upcoming next year, like the Gull Lake Trail and the roundabout. I mean, we may. And that's looking at about a 600 and say 50,000 amount that the city's looking at paying. As far as the big things, I don't know. I've got a whole thing listed out here, but I don't know where you want to start.
Well, I think if
I
we,
mean, as far as the 300,000 for the city hall improvements and also the fire hall at 80,000, I see one thing I'd like to do is push those off. Because we are looking at improvements or the renovation of city hall. So wondering if there's any way we can push that off to do the improvements at that time, because one, you probably could save on some labor costs and some other things at that time. And I don't know if they're going to be doing any upgrades with the fire hall, but possibly pushing those off at that time too. I think we can wait another year or until we find out if the full extent of what the improvement, the addition to city hall will be. Just that's my opinion. I'd like to throw the improvements to city hall in with the additions to the city hall. Put that together at that time. And then at that time, possibly looking at bonding if that's one way we want to go. I'd also like to do that with the fire hall, just to take those off the table tonight.
If I could, Mayor Ann.
Yeah.
So a couple of things on the city hall improvements and the fire hall roof specifically. So those two items are not included in our operating budget at this point, but they are needs and things we need to address. So to Councilmember Fraley's comment, yes, we could certainly look at that as part of a bigger project. Our Public Works Director, Tom, is working on the capital improvement plan for our buildings, for the ones that we don't have that established yet. And so that might be very helpful once those are complete. That will be available for you at your November meeting to look at, to really see what the full picture is potentially for the fire hall, for City Hall, if there are other things beyond what we know, things like that. So I understand the comment and would agree with that, so long as we don't forget about addressing the needs, because there are needs. We have a leaky roof and we have some things we need to do. But if we're trying to come at it from a, bigger picture, kind of holistically, how can we improve have a bigger impact? I would understand that. So if that makes sense to the council, that seems reasonable, that we'd continue to work on planning and developing a plan for our buildings once we have that full picture.
What if we were to say decrease the amount of that 300,000 to a third of that amount and
Yeah.
budget for that project to be repaired? Or is it something that is immediate that has to be addressed? Are these roof leaks to the point in which they have to be? I mean, $300,000 is comprehensive for the roof. Is that? my
So that's
understanding?
not just the roof. That's
Okay,
the roof,
that's
that's
what I
new
thought.
windows in the building, that's some exterior improvements that need, our stonework is cracking and falling apart, some of that, just,
Okay.
so those are the exterior, few structural improvements, energy efficient type things, so
Sure.
not interior remodel type things, but kind of the exterior, so that was that, and potentially, my note was, using unreserved funds, because we have money sitting there aside potentially for that piece. But again, if you feel like if we potentially might add on to the building or do something in addition, is that worth just looking at it as one component?
Well, if we want to do that, we all think that's a good idea to just set that off to the side, since it's not a budget issue.
Mhm.
Then we can do that and give Tom and time to get everything put together. And then we can come back and readdress it as a separate issue, but that'll save us time tonight. So we don't have to think about that.
And it's a pretty hefty chunk. I mean, 12% of that levy point would.
Well, yeah.
Mhm.
And there's also other things to think about with the city hall improvements. Does that number include once you do the repair work and you find out, oh boy, there's a
Mhm.
whole bunch of black mold?
Mhm.
There's other contingencies, which there's gonna most likely be. And then it becomes a health issue for staff working in the building. I mean, it's all self-contained right now, but once you tear into stuff, it's not. And you don't have a choice, you gotta fix it. So. So yeah, I think if we can set that aside, so that, and then just talk about some of the stuff that. Is probably, how do we address it? I mean, one thing we got to keep in mind too, is we've been asking staff to put all this together for each department.
And very grateful. that
Well,
they're doing
yeah,
that.
and
Very
it's still
grateful.
a work in progress in some cases. It's, in some departments, other departments have done it and stuff, but hopefully staff, I think, understands, this is a tough year, but at the same time, we can't just blow it off. I mean, it's got to be addressed and figured out how we're going to get from point A to point B.
Mr. Mayor, I wasn't at the last meeting, but I understand that the council made it. The levy would be 20%. We're looking at.
The
taking it
preliminary,
down.
it was 19, yeah.
And what was the decision to get it down to what? From the 20%?
That's why.
We didn't have that discussion.
No,
No.
So what are we thinking? If we're
If-
saying,
if-
we're gonna take this and knock it down to
If-
10%,
I won't go any higher than 12.2%.
okay?
That's where I'm at.
That, I need a frame of reference. Is how much cash are we willing to spend? And then we can figure out where that cash goes.
What was that? The middle one was 13 point.
Well, if all the council members have an idea of what their number is. Let's throw it out there. Mark, your number is 12 point, that would be your max, right? 12%, basically.
12%.
Mark, do you have a number or not? Or-
No, I
Okay.
really don't.
Okay. You're gonna like me, Don. I would like to stay at around the 9.95, somewhere in there. But that would include, but then to do that, the way I look at it is that we would have to use COVID money to purchase some of the things for some of the departments that would make life easier, give them a better understanding, like in the case of the police department, the Axiom system. How much is that really going to take off of their plates? How much will that condense their workload? How much will that make it easier for them to do things? Okay. And then we have a year to get it going. Plus, if we did it that way, we wouldn't have to wait till the end of the year to do it. We could do it right now, get their equipment, get it up and running. But it's always a but. We would have to add to their budget starting for 2024, roughly $18,000 per year. Because there's a ongoing maintenance plan that goes with the Axiom system. But the other but is we're not hiring a person to do it. And in talking with the other entities that use the information, the prosecutors, et cetera, they would love to see it happen because the way it's currently working is not the best.
So you're saying 9.5.
I'm saying 9.5.
So if we say 9.5, all of these items here, these are all new items.
Well, these are all new items. These aren't in their budgeted request, correct?
Well,
I
so
mean,
a lot of.
technically, yes, they are, but
Right, and a lot of these items are for the capital improvement plan, the long range planning, which I have incorporated into that. 9% roughly is to say it's gonna, our long range planning needs to, the reserves need to grow. And we need to keep putting money into that. So for example, the community center items, that's built into that base budget, assuming that we wanted to keep building that and not cut that funding.
Is any of this in that base budget?
Yes, yes, that's what I'm saying. So those set asides, references to set aside in the capital improvement plan, those are things that are built into that budget.
Mhm.
Like I said, it was roughly a 9% trying to, factor in those things. That's again, just trying, my best to categorize everything as best you
To make
can,
it-
but
so to make it clear, I think
If it says.
if all this stuff was included in the budget, that would require the 19 point
Yes.
levy increase.
Correct.
9% levy increase, basically this stuff is going away. Because unless it could be purchased,
Not all
No.
of it, no.
so
No.
anything in blue is included in the preliminary budget.
Yep.
So that's the 9%.
Well, that's the 19%.
19%,
Because you
okay.
have staffing in here, you have other larger
Right.
purchases in here. But the references to our set asides for the capital improvement plan, all of, so that's all part of that 19. But when you're thinking, I personally consider that a part of our base budgeting. We need to keep doing that. And then there are some maybe, additional requests and things you want to talk about, like the Axon system. That's a newer item. That's not in our capital improvement plan, but that was a strategic plan item request from the police department that you've been talking about.
Mr. Mayor. What is the actual cash value of every 1% that we knock out of the budget?
25,000.
25,000.
Mhm.
So
If we want to come down 10%, we need to knock out $250,000 from this overall. And everything in blue, correct?
I just wanted to say something. If I look at staff wages adjustments, that's a 4%. Looking building matrix, that's 2.5%. Utility inflation, insurance and supplies increases, that's 4%. If you put on the Axion, that adds 1%. county state road projects set aside, that's 1%, and those total or come to a 12.5% levy. But then again, as Mayor Ryan said, you know, possibly using ARPA for the some of that. Yeah. Well,
So while you're what was your number, Jesse? Do you have one in your mind?
I go with a lot of scenarios in my head to try to outline what I think is best and try to gauge what everybody else's opinions are. I do not think that in this specific climate, we should be overly aggressive with having this levy be high. Respect to those that live within our city. CPI data was still very high, even for Midwest still. But that concerns me just with forecasting where we're going to be in the next calendar year. Well, we'll be sitting here again trying to come up with our 2024 levy. If we're able to budget appropriately for some of these larger projects and very high dollar projects, not even including the staffing, but the city hall improvement and the replacement of the fire hall roof. If there is time that can be allotted to be able to get us through some of these cycles, economic cycles, they need to be discussed and need to be explored. So if you're asking me where my magic number is, I hope that kind of gives you an outline. Try to keep it as low as possible with consideration for the needs that we actually have. So that's why I wanted to discuss with the full council. And I think why, as a consensus last month, we decided to err on the high side until you two were here so we could discuss in general what your additional thoughts were on some of these items. I would like to see this lower for all. And some of these, if they are able to be budgeted out and pushed out, then have that discussion tonight so we can get the staff prepared for November and then ultimately when we vote and decide in December.
Mr. Mayor, we're looking at 250,000 roughly.
Yeah.
There are two items on the sheet that achieves that without hurting anybody. Control access system to offset all buildings, 160,000, and a generator for City Hall, 148. Those two give you the 250,000 alone.
I apologize. I don't want this document to be confusing, but those two items are not in our budget. Those we've been discussing with ARPA funding, so separate from our operating budget. So unfortunately, that's the challenge, is the items on the first page in blue are really the items you can cut, so to speak, from the budget.
So some of the higher dollar items that you pointed out before, which tell me if I'm wrong, was $300,000 for the city hall improvement, 80,000 for the fire hall roof, 80,000 for the new office manager for the police department, and 77,000 for public works.
Yeah, those are the items I was looking at,
Right.
not to say you take them all out, but look at them and next.
Can we, let's just start with the largest item. I think that'll be good. I mean, we
Yep,
all had
let's
our
start
opening
there.
statements. We
Oh,
all have
yep.
our
So let's start with the 80,000. Right? That'll be the largest item then, the blue.
Oh, staffing, you mean?
Huh?
You mean this staffing?
Yeah,
Okay,
that would be the largest item.
all right. If we were looking at new staffing this year, I would say no for 2023 on both. That's where I stand.
I don't see us adding staff. I do at this time. I understand the need for it or the desire for it, but I think the other question is what isn't getting done. I'm not saying it's getting done efficiently or as efficiently as it can or should, but what isn't getting done. And if it's getting done, then do we add that burden to the taxpayer for now? but it can't go be overlooked. It has to be considered, and it has to stay on the front burner, in my opinion, but not this year.
Well, those two items is 157,000.
The state road project for Public Works, currently we put 25,000 away right now.
Yes,
This would be an additional 25,000 that we would put away. We have said 50,000 a year. It has consistently been nixed in to save a levy. We've got some projects that are coming up that are going to, in the future, that are gonna really whack this high, and we gotta consider it. What if we were to consider not getting rid of the full 25,000, but say adding another 10,000 to it? So it'd be 35,000 this year, adding another 10. And then we can just incrementally grow it until we can just eventually get to that magic number we had picked was 50,000. It might end up being higher, but at least we can get there. But we're not throwing that idea under the bus again, like we've been doing. Last year, I think, was the first year that we budgeted 25,000, that we actually kept it in there.
no, it was a couple years ago. We had the first year, and then it was cut,
Yeah,
and then we brought it back in 22, we're at 25. So
Yeah.
we're trying to at least hold it steady, if nothing else, but yes, if we can grow it, that's helpful.
Yeah.
Um,
because
That
we
would be
don't
great.
get, just so everyone, as a reminder, we don't always get a heads up
Mm-mm.
2 years or a year in advance on this sometimes. And the other thing for this is the state of Minnesota, I think Tom has explained it multiple times, comes along and decides to change the light bulbs on all the semaphores, and we get a bill. And we don't even know they're gonna do it this year or whatever. Or they do something, or the county does something with that standard maintenance thing in their book, but they don't, oops, we forgot to tell you. And boom, you get a $30,000 bill or a $5,000 bill or whatever. It adds up. So,
Well, for me, I'd like to see the full 25,000 added to the current 25,000, but if the consensus is to lower that, I'll be on board. That's where I stand.
you know, if you've taken away the two employee issues, you're looking at compact wheel loader.
So
six-
Can I
Go ahead.
interrupt? Because we've talked about two topics now, staffing and the county road project. So I'd like to get a consensus on each one.
Okay.
I feel like we're
sorry.
bouncing a little bit around, if that's okay.
No, that's fine.
So,
Staffing for me, as we said, is no.
yep, okay,
It'd be the same for me.
And me.
okay.
That's I'm saving 157,000.
Same for
That's a
Jesse.
majority.
Okay, okay, thank you. That's helpful. At least then we know.
Okay.
We can,
So
where we
that's
go
off
with
the
that.
table.
So,
They're
okay,
off the table.
okay, county state road
Can
projects.
we all agree though that we need to have city administrator in those departments that are asking for staffing continue to discuss this and keep this on the front burner?
Yes. Please.
I think that that's imperative. So,
Certainly, thank you.
So with the drop of those two, that puts us down to 12.83, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, that was my initial run, and it's been a while since I did that, but that was the 13.48 reflected in September. That was that middle option, was just taking off the two employee requests. So that's where you would be at, is the 13 roughly. So we're within the ballpark, and certainly it's easy to work through some of those details to get, if we're hoping for 12 or 13, we can work through that. Just to comment on the county road projects. We haven't had a lot of direct costs the last handful of years that we've been able to look in our system. We haven't had our system for that long, so we don't have a long history for tracking that, but it does happen. So I don't think that the council is desiring to take that away completely, so I want to keep that. But it's certainly something that if that's a place where we can use some dollars to help offset a little bit of a cost, that's potential there for that. To meet in the middle between the original additional 25 to something in between.
I believe in our discussions last month, regarding that exact line on the road projects, that the expenses were rather high in the past couple of years.
Yes,
those
specifically
categories.
for, we had the intersection project that
Correct.
came through was very high. Yes,
Right, and those funds were then tapped out of the general,
yes.
okay.
Yeah.
Just from my understanding. Past councils. I mean. 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago, to get this general fund to where it's at today. Outside of obviously interest, has there been allocated funds to be able to increase that amount during good economic timeframes? And that's reason as to why it's at where it's at.
I don't know that there was an intentional effort for that. I think it was just a positive consequence of good management of operating budget by staff, and that there were leftover funds, and that continued to build our unreserved funds. So we have fund balance to, use for different projects. So I think that that's been great stewardship by the staff and the council. So so that's great. It's just built over time. So we've held it very steady the last couple of years, which has been great as well. For me, it was just keeping it steady. Not, you don't want to grow it too much, have too, at some point, there's this perception that you can have too much money sitting there. You want to use it for the benefit of the community.
Mhm.
And so that's something to consider too, as far as using the money that we have, but also keeping that 1 year's worth of reserves available for difficult economic times, or if something were to happen where we need to tap into money that really quickly.
Which in a conversation you and I had a couple of weeks ago, we determined that that was an amount of roughly $2 million, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So without burdening too many of these categories, unknowns are unknowns. We can't predict when and how many projects state of Minnesota will come through into our area and conduct. We just don't. But if I agree with some of the notes, perhaps on these items, funding from the general fund for some of these items to be able to accommodate any of these additional items in blue. That may be an area during this time frame. We've been preparing this fund has been is very healthy.
Mhm.
We're not in a situation that, we haven't been in the situation since 2008. Right.
I do have a question though. Do we have what the total impact for the 2 squads that are needed since they got pushed off to 2023? Where's that at? I know roughly the total for 2 squads would be about 116,000, correct? I mean, if there's unused funds or so forth, where might we be sitting in 2023 for those? I'm sorry for straying, but I'm just looking at that also.
Well, I know that the squads have been ordered, so that's a positive development that we were able to get them ordered. So hopefully this next year, the orders hold and we can get the 2 vehicles that we need. We budgeted 58,000 in 2023 early on in the summer. And I don't know where that actual order price land. Do you know offhand? Okay, so we're right at that 55 to 60 range. So we'll be right on target with our 58,000, more than likely is very appropriate. We have funds left over from our 2022 budget that should cover most of the extra squad that we didn't buy this year that we'll purchase next year. And we'll just pull that out of the unreserved because that should roll into that. And that's what that's for.
And that squad, that was the K-9 squad, right?
Hmm.
7, yeah, because there's some special equipment in there. Okay. Not purchasing squads is something I can't see because honestly, it's not, I realize there's a safety issue. Once they get, they're 6 years old when we replace them. And there's ball joints and tie rod ends and things like that. And when you're going extremely fast, because it's happened to me, and the tie rod end goes out, it's not a comfortable feeling. It gets interesting very quickly. So, it's one of those things that, and again, it's the cost of doing business.
Mhm.
I mean, people just have to accept it. It's, but the money's there. I mean, we
Mhm.
budgeted for.
Right, so
these
that's not a
things.
worry.
Right. And it's the same with, fire department and stuff. So it's, sometimes you just got to do it. Yeah.
No, it more just adds generally to the challenge of purchasing these days, with lead times and unknowns, things get canceled. We don't have pieces of equipment to get, some of the things that we need. So I know that there's been a long lead time and so my concern is mostly ensuring that we know what our cost is and hopefully have a good sense for what that lead time is to be able to plan accordingly and not get too many things out there with an unknown result, be it cost or when we're gonna actually receive the item. And so that's for me, Ben, that let's get the things done that we have authorized to purchase, hopefully get in hand by mid next year and feel really good about that and then continue on.
So I think we set right now at 13.48 by taking off the 2 staffing.
Yes.
Correct.
We still need 94,000 if we need to get down 250,000.
Well, there are some items on here that, in talking with Jenny, are probably well within our grasp to do this year. Like garbage cans and things like that. Some of those that are, I know it doesn't sound like a big exciting object, but it needs to happen. Perhaps, those things, we can find a way to take care of that without even having to budget for it. I mean, there might be money left over. It might be a general fund thing that we can do. Because the department needs the availability of that stuff. And the same with some of the stuff for park and rec, like the anti-graffiti. If any of you have been to the pocket park down there, it needs a major facelift. It's gonna be a huge project. But the anti-graffiti it's peeling off, so it needs to be cleaned up and then reapplied. And if anyone doesn't know what that is, it's a coating that is put over the stones and the brick and stuff so that people can't, you can clean it up when it gets. So,
Yes, we will be able to come back next month and
Yep.
tell you if there are things that we're able to accomplish. I did ask that question specifically about the garbage cans. I mean, every little bit helps. And so if there's an opportunity to order something and get it here and check it off the list, I think that's great to be able to do that. So yes, I know staff's working on that and I'll have an update for you. So there's potential there. I just don't know exactly at this point what, because timing of getting products and things like that is a challenge.
Well, I'd be okay with the 13.48 right now and to see what we can cover with funds from this year. I know that you'll be able to let us know in November.
Mhm.
So,
I do have a question with regards to our COVID money that we do have. We have a total of how much in COVID money?
204,000, some change.
204?
Yep.
Okay. One thing I did, and I hate to keep beleaguering the police department, but one thing I did mention to Jenny was like the thermal imaging. Moving forward, remember I asked Chief Taylor at the last meeting, how long are those units? Should they last? I mean, are you replacing that with every single squad car purchase? So you roll it into the price of the car. Luke Hall, Officer Hall made the comment, they thought they were like 8 years or so, something in that range. We'll know by the time the cars that have them are up for replacement. But that's an item that can be rolled into the cost of replacing a squad car if it is going to be something that they need to have on the cars every time they purchase one. But the 8,200 would get the 2 squads that are coming in equipped with those thermal units. Then we would be down, then every car has one but one, correct?
I'm pretty sure that's right. Yep.
Yeah, I think every car has one but one. And that car, we could talk to Craig and say, when you're the chief and say, you know, when you're incorporating the next squad into your budget, incorporate that cost into it. So it's all looped into one.
Mhm.
Plus, we don't have to pay tax on new equipment that's going into a new car. So it's not a big savings, but it adds up over the years. So, you know, there's an item there, the Axion system, again. The fire department didn't have. There's stuff that's not in the budget consideration for that could be looked at, you know, on us on a per case basis with some of that stuff coming up, like we were talking earlier. So, you know, there's another 2 items that could come out. So there's what, 31,
551.
31.5, 23, 351 and 8,200, 35.5, something like that. Or maybe 32.
31,551.
How does everybody
31s.
feel about downtown master plan for 35,000? That's just a plan.
Well, and.
I like that idea.
And again, it's yeah. And that was something that we were looking at in conjunction with the park plan.
Yes, seeing how the park plan process plays out here over the next few months. That one isn't in our budget, so that would be another one of those. Are we gonna spend money out of our unreserved like we did for the parks plan?
Yeah.
So that would be how we'd handle that or proposed.
So we're looking at the items in blue. Okay.
So, Mr. Mayor, are you saying you want to use ARPA funds for the Axion and the thermal imaging for the police department?
Well, we could use ARPA funds, or we could use a combination of ARPA and not I mean, with case of the thermal imaging, it's a one-time shot because from this point moving forward, it will be incorporated with the cost of purchasing a new squad. So it's a one and done. And then I don't know what the hang time is for ordering to getting. So with everything else, you know, it seems like everything else is so backed up. They have been using the thermal imaging. It has been a great tool for them. They've been very, very happy with it. So it's not just a gadget that's nice to have.
If we added both those items, took them from the ARPA amount of 204, it's easy math, it'd still be about 172.5 left in that. And all of that has been received.
I'd like to, well,
You know, and again, we don't have to hammer it all out tonight. We do have November.
right.
And people can, as you get ideas, I would encourage you to come in and talk with the city administrator, come in and talk with staff, the department heads and stuff. Liaisons, get a hold of your department heads. And, you know, what can or can't be done.
I'm just gonna throw something out there. I think I may have said it earlier, but I'd like to see some of the ARPA funds, if not all of it, going towards the Gull Lake Trail and the roundabout to help offset those costs. That's just where I'm at. I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be decided tonight. When do we have to decide on those funds?
The end of 2024.
Okay, so we have a year yet.
We do, yes.
Right.
And we have till December to make our final budget. So
Yes.
the final, I mean, we've decided.
Please don't wait till December. I'm just teasing. Then I can get everything ready. Can we circle back to state county road projects? Did
Yep.
we have a consensus from the council? I don't know if I missed it.
I'd like to keep it at the 25,000, but adding 25,000.
Additional, okay,
Yep.
so at 50, any other council preference?
Yeah, I'm full. I want to keep that in there. Yeah.
Okay.
That's important.
I'm good with keeping it in there. If we can't,
For now, anyways?
there's something
Okay.
has to be added, but
Okay.
I'm good with keeping it in there. We've put it off long enough.
I'm also fine with leaving it in there. I don't think it should be taken out. I don't know how much purpose there is to actually add to it, since it's just literally an unknown target.
Question.
Mhm.
On this page.
Okay.
Considering that let's say the average house is $400,000 now. With what we've talked about tonight, where does that put us on this chart?
So if I make the assumption that basically the items that were the two staffing requests would be off the budget, then we're at roughly 13.5%.
Okay,
And you'll have a sheet in there that will reflect 13.5%. And so what I put together was to say, if we look at a $200,000 home and just go across the board to 200,000 between last year and this year,
$400,000 home.
you want to talk about a 400,000?
Well, I don't think there are very many houses.
Well, I just picked just a number for illustration. Just go with me for a minute, Don. Because of the increase in our tax base, where you would actually see a decrease in our taxes, because our tax base is going to increase about 30%. So even when you're talking about a 13.5% increase, it still means less taxes because of the large increase in the tax base. However, as everyone has experienced, how home values aren't staying flat. So what you need to look at is 200,000 to, let's say, 25% increase, 250,000. And what does that number look like? So you would actually see a $78 increase in your taxes because of the growth of, or the increase in your tax base, and looking at the one line compared to the new line of the valuation. If that makes sense. So I worked through this with Mayor Ryan the other day, but if I were to have plugged in a 5% increase in the tax capacity, you would see several $100s increase in this new tax impact liability for the taxpayer, just because of the discrepancy of now the tax base isn't growing as much as a 13.5% levy. So it does provide a little bit of a cushion, so to speak, on the impact of the actual tax dollars, but there would still be an increase because everybody's tax value has gone up.
So basically the net tax capacity tax rate is just going down. But the actual tax that we pay is really going to go up because our house values are going up.
Mhm.
Mhm.
That sounds like a very good political statement.
Yeah. It's for money.
It's complex, and yes, so certainly the impact will be seen once the tax statements come out at that 19%.
But you can always
Go
put
from
that
there.
back onto the state because their automatic loss set in, so everybody's valuations went up this year. And to say that our county was pretty much in the midline. You know, you go up to some of the northern counties, they were up close to 70% increase in valuations. My former home in Bemidji went up 63% in valuation. So yes. So I like to put that on the state.
So right now, being at roughly 13.5, I understand the council would like that to be as low as possible, the final number, but is there a more specific target you would like staff to look at for November?
If we were to take the Axon evidence management system, that's rounded up about 1%.
Mhm.
If we purchase that with the ARPA money, they're gonna get that much quicker. Is
I
that right?
would assume, yes, if we're
Correct.
doing, if we did that next month as opposed to waiting till next year.
When next year? It's not January, is it? Or would it be?
Yeah,
would be
yes, we
January?
can. Yeah,
Okay,
certainly we
alright.
can do that.
So it's 2 months sooner, I guess.
Yeah, if we were to take both those and the thermal imaging off.
Actually,
and
I
pay-
was just looking at the Axon alone. If you want to throw thermal imaging on that, sure, but just that $23,000, $23,351 mark
Yeah.
for the Axon evidence management system. I mean, then we're getting to the below 12.5 mark.
Yeah.
That gives you a good window, I think.
Mhm.
Yep.
For the next month. You guys have any other recommendations on it?
Well, my thought is if we can pay, if do the accent and thermal imaging through ARPA or another way, that would bring it closer to where I'd like to be at 12.2.
Right.
So
Yep.
are we pretty well set?
12.22. And there's still $172,500 left over in the ARPA funds.
Mhm.
And
If the council's interested in doing that, we could add that to our agenda tonight to authorize staff to move forward with those two items to purchase. Just a suggestion, if you want to not wait until November.
I think Jesse and I are a yes on that.
I think we might as well.
I'm in favor of that. It's house money, technically.
Mm-hmm.
I don't consider it as such, but it's a,
Yeah.
it's,
It's a way of putting it.
it is a way of putting it, yes.
We could use a credit card that wouldn't cost us anything.
Yeah. I thought that's what we were using.
It's gonna go on a balance sheet somewhere. But it's the same concept, you know, as the donation to the food shelf. It's taxpayer money going back to taxpayers.
Mhm.
So I think that this, we're taking an employee request away from chief, and I know we're taking something away from Tom as well. So, you know. well,
I would just like to say, I would want you, Jenny, to reach out to the department heads and I think the full council, the appreciation of all the work they've done for these budgets. It's hard work. I know, and also not to take what they have on off for next year, put it back into consideration for next year, especially the staffing.
Will do, thank you.
It's definitely important, and it should be reiterated that this environment that we're in, and a couple months to a full calendar year next year, unknowns of what could partake economically. It's a lot of pressure on everybody, not just us here, but also those that are within the city and beyond. And sometimes we may just have to be as considerate as possible on items that we have been hoping to get, but get it next year.
Well, I know I shouldn't say this, but the environment you're referring to is a recession. Well, yeah,
Well, if everybody's,
I.
no, finish first. I was gonna say, if everybody's in consensus, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make an motion to adjourn.
Can I ask one question first?
Go
Are
for
we,
it.
are we including our request? Are we adding a request onto our regular agenda? Those two items, so we
Yes.
can, okay,
Yes.
just want to confirm. Great, perfect, and
Just what I like amendments to the,
yes, amended agendas, yes. So 12 to 13 and a half is going to be the high end now. 12 target. That's our range.
12-2 range, but we can, if need be, we can, just come back to us, because I'm sure there'll be some ways to take something off the table.
Okay.
Through funds that can be paid for this year.
And for council members too, and I know for those that are running for election, you're probably doing this, but those of us that aren't, get out there and talk to people and let them know. This is the possibility today, unfortunately. And what do they want? Ultimately, we should be doing what they want. Jenny, do you have anything else?
I don't. Thank you very much for the feedback.
No, I'd like to see it a little lower, but
I think we all will.
see what they can do.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the workshop.
Now, so move.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You're gonna put that in, aren't you? Good answer. Huh?
we all. Which town?